When the Crescent City can eclipse the suns, you're here on Pass the Rock.
Could one of y'all pass the gosh darn rock? Hey, yo, I'm trying, I ain't lying, and hosting this will be Brian.
Yeah.
Posting like Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
flying to see the pie.
Yeah.
Hit the hezzy, we got Jesse, opinions get kinda messy. A fan of out of Letty's, from football to racing jet skis. He goes silly when he go deep, sheesh, is Zach Zeman. Teaming up with Jack, we stack the whole team, man. Pass the rock, don't stop the shot clock.
Woo.
Smack the slap shot, come on, now let's talk. Pass the, yo, partner, pass the rock, for real.
Yes, I decided to come back after a putrid loss by the Saints last Monday against the Bucs. I'm here to talk football. Thankfully, they did not ruin my weekend this time because they were on the 6-team bye week in week 14. Zach and Jack, how you doing?
I mean, I'm doing great. I honestly, the 6-team my week in week 4. Why does that exist? Honestly, that was a bit of a damper on my weekend. I should have been in fantasy playoffs already, but no, here we are having to stick with a 1-week first round and 6 teams on bye this week. But it was still a fun weekend of football, and I'm ready to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm with you. Absolutely horrible decision to have 6 teams on bye this late into the season. I mean, it's not even a good break point for them. They're pretty much almost done. They only have like a month left after this. Why would you wait this long to give them a break? They've worked their bodies so hard already. So not only from a fantasy perspective, but just from a logistical standpoint, no clue why they would do that. But other than that, I'm having I had a great weekend. It was good.
Awesome. There's always teams that have it too early or too late, but 14 just seems way late, especially to have, almost a quarter of the league out. So anyway, let's talk a little NBA news to start. Jack, I have a question for you. The Pelicans are super hot. Joel Embiid is super hot. Which team is more impressive to you at this point?
Oh, absolutely. The Pelicans. I mean, the Pelicans have been unbelievable at this point in the season. They've been, I think, without a doubt, the best team in the West so far, and potentially the best team in the NBA. I mean, I would still, I think, have the Bucks and Celtics ahead of them. But after that, I don't think it's crazy to say the Pelicans have been number 3 after the two of them. Off to an incredible start. Zion looks back to form, looks incredible. And I mean, while Joel Embiid has been incredibly impressive, I don't know that the team as a whole has been as cohesive and as amazing as the Pelicans have. So I am easily going with the Pelicans there.
And imagine having a top 5 pick this year when the Lakers continue to stumble. Zach, over to you. Something that Jack, kind of mentioned was Joel Embiid doing well, but maybe not the team. How do you see your 76ers kind of bounce back from this first quarter of the season and looking forward for them?
Look, I mean, it's been a weird first quarter of the season as a Sixers fan. I have personally been very just apathetic towards them. I haven't really watched them because I'm not really interested in them right now. I don't like Doc Rivers' coaching style at all. I don't like how the players' body language looks. I don't like their effort on the court. It's tough to watch right now. And of course, I tuned in to the 53-point game. I tuned into the 59-point game. I tuned into like one other game so far this season. It's really hard for me to watch because this team just does not look cohesive right now. And if we want to, compete for anything, I think you have to consider moving on from Doc Rivers to get, put a spark in this team. But I don't think we do that. So I don't see my 76ers competing right now for anything. Just because it's a hard watch right now. It's a hard sell. And I'm not convinced that this team is a championship contender quite yet.
Yeah, I have 2 takeaways from this weekend. Number one, I love the fact that the NBA did the scheduling anomaly of playing the same team twice in the same arena over a weekend or over a couple of days. It was beautiful to see the Suns and Pelicans fight a little bit Friday night after Zion windmill dunked right at the end of the game up 11. And then beautiful they had to play again Sunday. It was a beautiful thing. And then the Pelicans get the Jazz on Tuesday and Thursday of this week in Salt Lake. So I kind of like that series, or, at least a home series against the team. I thought it was really smart. And Chris Paul, much respect to him, former New Orleans Hornet, but stop being the hypocrite. You don't have to be game mode every single second of every single day. And let's remember that you have also run up the score on people. So don't give me your whining. Don't give me all that. Willie Green wants none of it. All right? You lost twice. We'll see you on, I think it's Friday of this week. We go to Phoenix. So exciting to see that little budding rivalry. Although, like CJ McCollum said, it's not a rivalry at all until the Pelicans can step up in the playoffs. So excited to see that. Moving on to the Monday Night Football game. As exciting as maybe the NBA was over the weekend, this matchup doesn't get me that juiced up. We have Patriots at Cardinals. So we'll give our one takes. This is one of the harder Monday night games for me to pick because neither team gets me excited. You could sell me in 17 different ways of 17 different outcomes. Both teams very inconsistent. I really want to pick the Patriots. I really do. But I just have a feeling that, after the bye, D-Hop and the boys, Kyler Murray and them, are going to come in and have a little bit of success. I have a 21-19 game, and I think it's like, 7-6 going into the fourth, and then there's a little explosion for some points. I think the Cards take the lead late and win it. Jack, to you, how do you see this boring game playing out?
Yeah, I mean, look, both these teams are middling, like you said. I understand that perspective where you're coming from, but to me, there's one thing that sets the Patriots apart from the Cardinals, and that is Bill Belichick. I mean, if you're just looking at the head-to-head coaching matchup of this game, we've got Cliff Kingsbury, who might be the worst coach in the NFL, and then Bill Belichick. I think this will be an absolute masterclass by Bill. I think the Cardinals' offense is going to struggle mightily against that Patriots defense, and even if the Patriots offense isn't that impressive, I think they're going to be more than good enough to put at least some points up on this Cardinals defense. So I'm going to go Patriots 23, Cardinals 13. And I think that Cardinals offense is going to look really bad out there tonight against Bills defense.
Well, the good news, Zach, is that there's no pressure on you to pick the same team, because Jack and I disagree. So where do you have this game? Do you see any scoring?
Man, I mean, the only real matchup I see that, that's really going to stand out is the Cardinals offense versus the Patriots defense. That's going to be the matchup tonight that everyone's going to be watching. How will the Patriots defense respond to an offense that coming into the season, a lot of us thought was going to be very explosive? Really, it's been kind of mediocre, a little disappointing, if anything, but they still have that potential. I am riding with the Patriots, however. Bill Belichick has always had a great defense. He's a defensive-minded coach at heart. They've always done well defensively. I wouldn't say Cliff Kingsbury is the worst coach in the NFL. I still think Brandon Staley is running for that title as well. But give me the Patriots 20, Cardinals 17.
I don't think it's Staley after last night. I think it's squarely on Dennis Allen's shoulders who the worst coach in the NFL is.
Oh,
but
what about Nathaniel
I'm biased.
Nathaniel Hackett.
That's right. Yeah, Nathaniel Hackett might actually be the award winner for worst coach.
An award they should definitely give out. Okay, moving on from Monday all the way back to Thursday, an exciting game between the Raiders and the Rams. Both former, the Rams are now again LA, make their home in LA, but they used to both be in LA in the 80s. Zach, going to you first. Weird quarterback controversy maybe in LA?
I'm not calling it a QB controversy just yet. I mean, after all, Matthew Stafford isn't healthy right now, so you can't really have a controversy without two healthy, talented quarterbacks. But, I mean, if Stafford's injuries continue to plague him as his career goes on, because, injuries, they only get worse as you go along, there's a good chance that Baker could be the new guy for Los Angeles. He could be a franchise guy, at least for a few years. I think that's very much possible, especially after Thursday night's performance. But again, this is not a QB controversy because Matthew Stafford isn't healthy right now. If he was healthy and, the Rams were starting Baker over Stafford, then we'd be having the controversy talks. But really, the biggest loser from all of this is that the Carolina Panthers couldn't figure out what to do with Baker when he still has all this talent left. We saw that, 2 days learning the playbook, and he's able to take the Rams on, 98-yard game-winning drive. That doesn't just happen. You don't have just everyday quarterbacks doing that. You need actual talent to be able to do that. So I was very impressed. I think Baker has a future in Los Angeles, whether it's as a backup or potentially their new, I wouldn't say franchise guy, but their guy for a few years.
All right, over to you, Jack. I don't think Jack's reading the press clippings and being so positive about Baker just yet.
Yeah, look, he was impressive. I mean, you can't say that he wasn't coming in on 2 days of like literally being in the system for 48 hours and coming out there and winning a football game is unbelievably impressive. But it is a wild overreaction to say after one game that Baker could be the future quarterback in LA. I mean, we saw his last season in Cleveland, what he did in Carolina at the beginning of this season. He has not been good. Like in the last 2 years of him playing football, he has not been a good starter quality NFL quarterback. This was the first time in the last 2 years that he's looked that way. You cannot say after one game that he's been in the system for, you can use that argument the other way. He's only been there for 48 hours. You don't know how he's going to look when he's fully immersed in the system. I just can't see anyone saying that based off of that, this is the guy for the next 3 years for the Rams. Like, I don't know how you can possibly go that route. And just on the flip side of things, this is the most Raiders loss ever. I mean, how do you lose to a quarterback that's been on the team for 48 hours? Just the same way, how do you lose to a head coach that came off of ESPN 2 days ago? Like, the Raiders only find ways to lose against the most ridiculous teams. And honestly, I feel like I should have seen this coming in this game, and I didn't. But gotta love the Raiders choking whenever possible, and impressive for Baker, but he's not the future yet.
But it's like their fourth game this year that they were up 14 or more points and they lost. Like in the fourth quarter or maybe late third to fourth quarter.
Are we sure we're talking about the Raiders and not the Ravens there?
Well, we're talking about the Ravens as well.
Yeah.
And look, pretty soon you have to add the Saints to that group. I think the deal with Baker is I think he needs the exact right coach to be special. Obviously he did it winning a Heisman at Oklahoma. And, coming over here, he's had one good season. He beat the Steelers in the playoffs. Let's remember a couple years back. But I just wonder if this is the kind of coach that he needs to just have. I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar MVP candidate. He'll at best, be serviceable. But whenever you have an old quarterback, and trust me, my team has had an old quarterback for the past 5 years, you're always looking like how are we going to replace him? And that little glimpse of a 98-yard drive is exactly what gets, all four LA Rams fans really excited about what their future could be. So,
that's exactly why I said his future could be as the backup to Stafford for the time being. But maybe, again, we don't know for sure what they're planning to do with him after this season. But I think there's potential. Maybe Baker Mayfield is like the next Jared Goff or Sean McVay, a quarterback that McVay's able to elevate to a new level just based off of the scheme, based off of the coaching.
Right.
It was a great fit for Goff when he was there. Maybe McVay just has a certain type of connection with his system to certain quarterbacks. That could totally be it. But I don't think we're going to get a conclusive answer until the offseason and next season about the Rams quarterback room.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Cooper Kupp's stock would go down.
Oh, yes.
Mayfield.
That's really interesting, actually. Yeah.
Going to Vikings-Lions. So I was really confident about the Vikings yesterday. I very well respect what the Lions are doing, but I just felt like this was a smash spot for the Vikings at noon to show that they are the number 2 team in the NFC and leave no doubt. And all they did was leave doubt. They're supposed to be ready to contend, and they just can't do it. Kirk Cousins just can't do it. Are there any teams, and I'm asking this to Jack first because I'm worried that Zach is not going to have a positive answer. Are there any teams that are ready to take on the Eagles in the NFC, Jack?
I think for sure there are, but I do agree with you. The Vikings are not one of them. But I think that Dallas could give them a run for their money. I know they looked shaky this week against Houston, but this team has proven throughout the season that they can play well against good teams. Their defense can step up in big moments because it is a great defense, and that offense is confident enough to put up points. I also think San Francisco, they looked really impressive the last 2 weeks under Brock Purdy. I mean, much better than I think anyone could have possibly expected Mr. Irrelevant performing. And I could see them. I could really see them with all the weapons they have, with Shanahan at the helm and that incredible defense that they have. I could see them giving the Eagles a run for their money. So, no, I don't think the Eagles are running away with the NFC, but I do definitely agree with you. The Vikings are not one of those teams that's going to step up to contend with them.
The problem is the Vikings have to be. I mean, I am really, really interested in seeing the Cowboys Eagles play on
Christmas
December
Eve, yeah.
24th
Mhm.
and where they stand at that point. I don't want to say the Vikings are going to be it, but they are so much closer than the 49ers. I know the 49ers have a great defense, but this quarterback, okay, even if he can get him to the divisional round and Garoppolo comes back potentially, he's going to be a little bit of the walking wounded. So I early in the season, I just thought the Eagles were one of those teams that were showing out, but not going to be able to finish, the season or the playoffs on top in the NFC. But I think the NFC is so terrible. That's not a slight at the Eagles at all. I think the NFC is so terrible that there's no other choice but the Eagles. The Bucks can't pull it together. Obviously, the Vikings have issues. If I'm the Eagles, the team I'm worried about, and I'm going to transition to Zach here, might be like the Lions stepping up into the wild card round, winning their first game, and then having to go to Philly. And it's just one of these teams where they just playing for nothing, and nobody expects them to be there. And kind of like when the Commanders beat the Eagles. Your thoughts, Zach?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Lions are definitely a sleeper team. I'm not going to call them an NFC contender until they make it, but I do think that they're honestly a bigger threat than the Vikings at this point after just embarrassing them. The Eagles also embarrassed the Vikings early in the season. Not a lot of people seem to remember that. The Vikings, I in the back of my mind, I always knew that they weren't they were good. I don't see them being great yet. They're not top of the division. The only concern with me for the Niners, besides the quarterback situation, because, Brock Purdy's had some really good games, but we're not completely sure about his abilities yet. Losing Debo is a big hit, regardless of how they've been using him this season. That is a big hit. You're losing one of your best offensive weapons right there for 4 to 6 weeks, I think it was. So if he's not fully healthy by playoffs, that's going to be concerning. Other than that, the only other team I see competing with the Eagles for the NFC title is in fact the Dallas Cowboys. Their defense has been absolutely insane. Their offense, I mean, they have weapons. Unfortunately, they just lost their right tackle for the season. So that's going to be interesting to see how much that affects them. The Eagles already did beat the Cowboys, but granted, it was Cooper Rush at quarterback, not Dak Prescott. A lot of Cowboys fans would like to argue, oh, he made that much of a difference. If Dak was there, the Eagles would have lost that game. But we don't know that for sure. It never happened. Christmas Eve will be very telling of which of those teams will be the most prepared for a playoff run. I would love to say my Eagles, but the game is in Dallas, so anything could totally happen.
Yeah, no, it'll be really exciting. Moving on to another disappointing team, the Buffalo Bills. I know they played a good defense. I know the Jets have been playing good defensive ball, but when you look at the box score, okay, if you are truly a Super Bowl contender, you're playing a 7-5 at the time Jets team, now 7-6, because the Bills did get the win. Very important, not to go all to get all the Jersey Mikes mad, but they only had 232 net yards. Their passing yards were 130. The New York Jets gained them in passing yards by over 100 yards. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, you have to get your stuff together today because you're not going to have a chance against the Chiefs. You're not going to have a chance against the Bengals. You may not have a chance against the Dolphins, depending on how Tua finishes the season. This team is super disappointing to me. We already talked about it several weeks ago, but yesterday was a smash spot. I hate to use that term 2 times in a row, but you're playing the Jets. You need to show your dominance. You're the Buffalo Bills. Everybody thinks you're going to the Super Bowl. I don't see it happening.
No, look, I'm nervous about this Bills team at this point. I mean, you asked me maybe 3 weeks ago, what teams do I think are coming out of the AFC? I would have told you the Chiefs or the Bills. Those are the 2 teams that have consistently been at the top of the AFC. Now it just looks like it's only the Chiefs. We're all saying the NFC is the Eagles to lose. The AFC is once again the Chiefs to lose, in my opinion, because no one else has looked as consistent and as on top of their game as the Chiefs consistently throughout the season. I mean, I know Mahomes just threw 3 interceptions, but he's still Patrick Mahomes, and the Chiefs did still win that game. I do think the Chiefs right now are just in a different league than the Bills because the Bills have just they haven't impressed me recently, if that makes sense. They haven't played a game where they've really impressed me as a viewer.
I'll go to Jack in a second. I will say, don't forget about the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, they were the
that's
AFC
right.
champions last year. Jack,
All right, fair enough.
You
The Bengals have.
I apologize, Jack, if I stole
you
your
just took the
thunder.
words right out of my mouth. I was about to
that's
go
true.
hype up
No,
the Bengals.
the Bengals have impressed me too. They've impressed me too. I'm sorry.
Over the last 7 weeks, like since the Bengals started out 3-4, and now they're up to they're 9-4. I mean, like over those last 6 weeks now, I mean they've been unbelievable. They've arguably been the best team in the NFL over that stretch, and I think they're absolutely on the same level as the Chiefs. I still think the Bills are in the same tier, though. I wouldn't say that the Chiefs and the Bengals are a whole like they're next level, and then there's the Bills. I think they're on the same level, though, and that's not what we were saying at the beginning of the year. I mean, after the Bills went out and beat the Rams in Week 1, we're like, this team's winning the Super Bowl. They were already anointed, so they're definitely not that bona fide top number 1 team in the NFL that we thought they were. But I do think that they're still in that mix for the AFC Championship. And if we end up getting that Chiefs-Bills game in the AFC Championship that we thought we were going to get at the beginning of the year, I would not be surprised at this point, because the Bills have the talent and the coaching and the schemes on that team to make it there and to be a contender.
I mean, I think they have the talent, but I'm not sure if they're able to beat. Now, you're mentioning Bengals. I don't think they can beat the Bengals or the Chiefs. And this is a team coming into the season as Super Bowl favorite. The Bills, everyone was saying it's going to be the Bills going to the Super Bowl this year. They're finally going to get over the hump. They're finally going to beat the Chiefs in the championship game. They're going to make the Super Bowl for the first time in forever. This team right now is not showing me that, massive edge over the Bengals or the Chiefs. I think the Bengals or Chiefs, I'm taking them in that game against them, hypothetically, in that championship game.
Yeah, no, it's and I know the Bengals and the Chiefs play in a couple of weeks as well, so they got that coming up.
Again?
Didn't they just play?
Yeah, they just played.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It'll be no. I'm excited about the AFC. The NFC might be a little more boring. But moving on, Texans Cowboys, the state championship of Texas. I'll let Zach break a little breaking news for us and tell us about the Cowboys.
Yes, the Dallas Cowboys got a veteran wide receiver who has worn the number 13 in his past. Of course, we are talking about the one, the only T.Y. Hilton, formerly of the Indianapolis Colts. He has signed with the Dallas Cowboys. Now going into the actual events of the game, while I did say earlier that the Cowboys are the greatest threat to the Eagles right now in the NFC, they just got out of a gritty dogfight of a win against the 1-11-1 Texans. I don't know what annoys me more personally, the fact that the Cowboys did actually win this game, which they probably shouldn't have. But what annoys me more is probably that the Texans could have easily won this game if they just kicked the field goal. But just the fact that the 1-11-1 Texans put up such a fight against the Dallas Cowboys, who people have been saying, like they could be going to the Super Bowl. They could, they're the best threat against the Eagles. ESPN put out a graphic last week saying they had a 50% chance of making the Super Bowl. And then they almost lose to the 1-11-1 Texans. As is tradition, every single year, Dallas continues to be a pretender. Like, they're still a very good football team, but I don't see them winning it all.
I completely disagree with that.
Okay, sure.
I mean, I think they.
If you
I
watch
think
the
they're
game,
definitely
they're clearly pretenders.
No, they look terrible this week. I mean, you can't play like that against the Texans. I think that was very fair criticism, but I think that this team is too good to be playing like that consistently. I think they're going to turn that around. They've got that top end defense like we've been talking about all year. They've got the weapons on offense to be a contender, and I really think that they do turn around. Although I have to say, I think they messed up by not signing Odell. I mean, obviously, technically, they could still sign him, but I think the T.Y. move signifies that they're not going to go in that direction. And I understand that Odell's injury is more severe than people thought, that it's going to take him longer to get back than the Cowboys thought he would originally. I don't care. If you can get him back for the playoffs, that is a massive added weapon. That is at least a wide receiver too that you're adding that offense immediately. And that would be huge for them, just to get another guy in there that can make big plays in the playoffs, that has proven that he can make big plays in the playoffs given his run with the Rams last year. I think they messed up, and I don't think T.Y. Hilton is even a quarter of the player that he used to be. I don't think he can be that guy for them. And I think it would have been well worth their while to take a chance on Odell.
Yeah, Jack, I completely agree with what Jack is saying. I'm also a little surprised with the T.Y. Hilton signing. In his last stint with the Colts, he did not really impress me. He clearly isn't the same player he once was. But this lines up the Odell reunion in New York quite nicely, I think. I mean, look, I honestly love the idea of Odell going back to New York. I think it'd be a great reunion, and I think the Giants are desperate for another target besides Darius Slayton right now. Kenny Golladay is just straight up not playing for them, whether it's illness or just refusing to play. If the Giants want to stay playoff relevant, I think signing Odell would be a great move to make him a wide receiver too.
I'm going to take a separate. See, I think Odell would have signed if he was really, really healthy. And I just don't think he's healthy yet. I think he's going to end up, just kind of holding out the rest of this season and then signing in the offseason. So while if he is healthy, that was an option. Yes, the Cowboys messed up. They should have signed him. But I think the Cowboys was the smart play for him, at least, if he wanted to try to win a Super Bowl. Other than, obviously he's not going to go to Buffalo. Of those teams he got picked up or he stopped in on. But I just don't. The Cowboys are so interesting to me. The next 4 weeks, we're going to see how good they are at Jacksonville, Philly at home, at Tennessee, at Washington. That's a rough end. That's a lot of teams playing for something still. And they can't underachieve. They have to pull it together. They have to.
You really got to pull all the stops. I mean, if I can see them, they could win 3 or 4. They could also easily lose 3 or 4. I mean, that's a pretty tough stretch. So it's going to be very interesting watching the Cowboys over the last month of the season.
And if they are circling the game against the Eagles, they're going to lose to the Jaguars if they're not paying attention to what's going on there.
That would be music to my ears. Music to my ears if Trevor Lawrence defeats the Dallas Cowboys. I would be so happy.
Moving on, Eagles-Giants. Eagles first team to clinch a spot. I know Zach is super excited, so let's start with Jack. Why? What is going on with the Giants? Or are they really not disappointing us? They're just playing where we thought they'd be playing.
Yeah, I mean, I think when the Giants got off to that hot start, we sort of saw it coming a little bit, right? Like we all sort of like, this team isn't a 7-1 football team. This team should not be as good as they are. And it sucks to see this collapse. I mean, it was fun while it lasted, but this is, I think, much more of the team that we're going to be seeing from the Giants the rest of the way. I honestly don't think that they're going to make the playoffs at this point, given that I think that, I think that Seattle is a better team than them. I think that Washington's a better team than them. I think the Lions are a better team than them. There's just too many teams at the bottom of the NFC there that I think are better, that I think that they're going to fall out of the picture here. And I still have a good outlook on their future. I mean, Brian Daboll, I still think is a very good coach. I mean, the fact that he got the Giants to be even in the playoff conversation this season is pretty impressive, given where we thought they would be at the beginning of the season. But this team just doesn't have the talent to be a playoff team this season. And I think that they're starting to realize that at this point, and it's sort of falling off the rails. But look forward to the future, though. Brian Daboll's still that guy.
Yeah, I mean, they've had a pretty rough stretch here. They had Detroit, Dallas, Washington. They tied Philly. Washington next week. They have to win that game because after that, they have Minnesota, Indianapolis might be a possibility, and then at Philly to end it. Yeah. Hopefully, for their sake, Philly won't be playing for anything. So over to you, Zach. So the Giants look terrible. What does this say anything about the Eagles and their performance yesterday?
I mean, the Giants have going into the game, right? I saw throughout the week, Daboll and the Giants defensive coordinator kept praising the Eagles, as a complete team and all this, or a couple of press conferences they had. And I was like, okay, they're just buttering us up. Saquon's going to play. He might do good against us. We're going to have to see how we stop that. I think besides, the lack of talent at wide receiver, the Giants looked like going into this game an actual playoff, like hopeful. I was thinking, that this team could be a wild card team. But what the Eagles did was completely expose their lack of true talent. I do think Brian Daboll, he's the right guy for New York. He's a fantastic coach. He got them to 7-1, very impressive to do, especially when you look at this Giants roster. This Giants roster is not a roster I expected to do much, but Daboll's coaching did really, really well first half of the season. I don't know what's happened since then. Maybe it's just that lack of talent being exposed, but they've just fallen off the map. They're clinging on the playoff relevancy right now, especially after getting completely smoked by my Eagles. But, I mean, look, I had a great Sunday. Okay, I had a great Sunday. The Eagles with the win clinched the playoffs. Jalen Hurts continues to bolster his MVP case, which I think, especially after Patrick Mahomes' 3 interceptions, he is now the front runner for. So I'm very happy right now. I'm very happy with my Eagles.
That's a great segue. Let's talk a little Chiefs-Broncos next. So the Chiefs started off great. Then they started playing with their food a little bit before they finished their dinner. So eliminated the Broncos, put them out of their misery. They won't be making the playoffs, shocker, with how bad they've been all season. What's the problem with Kansas City, though? I think it's their lack of a true, like they haven't committed to a running back, and I think it's going to bite them in the playoffs, because I just think a team like the Bengals with Joe Mixon are going to be able to come in and establish the run game. I'm getting a little worried about the Chiefs. I still like them better than the Bills. I still like them slightly better than the Bengals, but I'm a little worried about playoff football and what they can do, because they won't be able to just throw the ball all over the yard. What do you think about their running game and how they can take that through the playoffs? Jack.
The thing with the Chiefs is that ever since they cut Kareem Hunt, they really have never committed to an RB1. I mean, this has sort of been what the Chiefs do at running back ever since they cut ties with Hunt after his whole situation. Yeah. And it hasn't really seemed to slow them down in the playoffs so far. And I don't really see a reason for that to change. And honestly, I think their running game this year might be better than in years past, because I think Isaiah Pacheco is a very capable running back. I think he's a good between the tackles guy, a good goal line back. And Derek McKinnon, as he proved this week, is a good option in the receiving game out of the backfield. So I honestly think that their running game is arguably the best that they've had since Kareem Hunt this year. And although they've lost Tyreek Hill, I mean, that could be the bigger concern going into the playoffs. But I think that Mahomes has also proven that he's utilizing his weapons perfectly fine this season. So I'm honestly, I don't think that's going to be a flaw for the Chiefs come playoff time. I think that they're going to be able to get around it as they always have, and I'm not too concerned about them.
Then why did they almost lose to the Broncos? What was the reason?
Well, I mean, the Broncos have a great defense. Say what you want about their offense and the struggles they've had this season, and Russell Wilson not playing up to par, although I'll get to that later. But their defense this season has been top 5. I don't think that's crazy to say. It has been an incredible defense. It's been the only reason the Broncos have even had close games this year. And after they went down by a ton early in this game, that defense started to step up. I mean, they intercepted Patrick Mahomes 3 times. How often does that happen? I mean, I think that's a product. When you see Mahomes have a game like that, it's usually because the defense starts to find a way to fool him, rather than him make I don't know. It's a little tough to say, because he doesn't usually beat himself very often either. He's that guy. But I think that this Broncos defense just is one of the top defenses in the league, and they gave Mahomes fits. And when that happens, it's going to be a close game, no matter how bad the offense is. And honestly, the Broncos offense had their best game of the year this week. So that's also
absolutely. They have their best game of the season. No question about that. I think this is one of the first times they've put up over 18 points this entire year. So congratulations, Broncos fans. You actually get a little consolation prize. Our team scored more than 18 points in a game.
So let's talk about the Broncos then, Jack. It's finally over. We don't really have to pay that much attention to them anymore. Not that we really had to in the past couple of weeks either. But what a disaster, and what a bounty that the Seahawks just made away with. They might as well change their name to the Pirates.
Yeah, I mean, what a collapse! Like, what a colossal failure of a season it was for the Broncos. Like, there's no other way to say it. They were completely disappointing. They're probably the most disappointing team this year. And I just, the one takeaway from this game is that Russell Wilson probably had his best game as a Bronco in this one. He looked good. He was moving outside of the pocket, which he hasn't done nearly enough this year, considering that's his best asset. And he was running the ball a lot more, making throws on the run, a lot more of what we saw of him in Seattle. And I guess that's a little bit of a bright spot to take away if you're a Broncos fan. I mean, maybe if you get a different coach in there, you replace like a guy that'll get him to run outside the pocket more, design more of those bootlegs. Maybe we see a better Russell Wilson in 2023, and hopefully that's a bright spot for Broncos to take away from what has otherwise been a very disappointing and very disgusting season for them.
Well, the biggest problem they have is he lost their team. Like, you know, players are out and out just done with him. And if you're Broncos management, I don't know what you do about that. John Elway's been chasing a quarterback since John Elway retired. Literally.
Well, I mean, he had Peyton for a few years there.
He did it.
Yeah, but that was he was a game manager for one of the best defenses in the past 20 years. I'm talking about like a legitimate like young guy to take for, as a career.
That was just the Super Bowl year, though. His first couple years in Denver, he was really good. Like that last Super Bowl year, yeah, he was a shell of his former self. He was
okay. I'm not saying Peyton Manning's a bad quarterback. I'm just saying not the franchise guy, young guy.
You really can't argue that Peyton Manning was ever that bad. He was never absolutely terrible. And even when he was a game manager, he was game managing a really solid offensive unit. So
if they had played anybody but Cam Newton in the Super Bowl, they would have lost. I mean, Cam Newton saw a fumble on the ground and did not jump on it, okay?
Probably.
Don't let me remind you about Super Bowl 50. All right, let's move on. Bucks 49ers. I was thinking that this game was going to go 49ers. I thought it was going to be pretty, like a 10-point win. To watch how this got out of hand was so beautiful for my eyes to watch Tom Brady lose. Jack, to you, what do we think about Mr. Irrelevant, Brock Purdy? I mean, what can we really expect? I don't want you to wear your 49ers superfan hat. Tell me how far this team can get with a 7th-round quarterback.
I mean, look, when Jimmy Garoppolo went down, you just sort of like, you get this feeling in your chest. You're like, oh, here we go. Like that's it. Season's over. And now we have Mr. Irrelevant coming in. But over these last 2 games, Brock Purdy has been very impressive. I mean, he has been pretty much, I'd say, what Jimmy Garoppolo has been for the 49ers this season. And if that is the play that he can continue, I mean, I'm not saying that he will, considering he was, the 242nd pick of the draft. I mean, you don't expect that from him. But if he can keep playing the way that he has over these last 2 games, against 2 good defenses, mind you, in the Dolphins and the Bucks, I see no reason they can't get just as far as they could have with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think this team is still potentially a Super Bowl contender. And in a weak NFC where it's really the Eagles and everybody else, I wouldn't be surprised if they're that other team in the NFC Championship game. And behind that defense, and all they need is average quarterback play from Purdy and with these weapons around him and this coaching staff, I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers find a way to get to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy at quarterback, which would be wild if you think about going into next season when you've got the ever-reliable Jimmy G. You've got the guy you gave up 3 first-round picks for and still definitely believe in Trey Lance. And then if somehow, some way they win the Super Bowl this year with Brock Purdy, what do you do if you have the Super Bowl champion in there too? I mean, I don't know how you make that decision. I mean, Jimmy G is gone, but how do you make a decision between a Super Bowl champion Brock Purdy and between the guy you gave up 3 first-round picks for and mortgage your future for in Trey Lance?
That would be the greatest story. That would be a better story than Tom Brady's rookie year.
Oh,
I mean, an absolute better story. It's not going to happen. There's no way. Zach.
There's no way it happens, but that potential storyline reminds me a lot of the Nick Foles Super Bowl run after Carson Wentz went down with the the ACL tear. Nick Foles takes the helm. Eagles struggle going into the playoffs, but then they finally figured it out. Go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl. what you're saying is basically a rehash of that story, and I don't think it'll happen again. I mean, I could go into a whole comparison of why Brock Purdy is not, in fact, Nick Foles, but I don't think we really need to hear that. The Niners are definitely still contenders to make it to the championship game. However, I do think the Eagles are still all around a little bit better than them. I think the Eagles do have the edge in that situation. I think the Cowboys might still have an edge on the 49ers right now as well. So I am not super confident yet in the 49ers led by Brock Purdy beating either the Eagles or the Cowboys in the championship game. And on top of that, losing Debo, you really got to take that into consideration. Like, they just lost Debo. It's going to not only, hurt the offense, it might hurt their playoff seeding in the end, if they're, just like where they end up in the standings and everything. I'm not saying Debo is going to change how a game, plays out, but you're going to miss him in some regard. And it's going to, if he's still out for the first round of the playoffs, that's definitely going to be a big hit for the Niners. So I think their ceiling is definitely championship game, not Super Bowl. And they can probably reach that considering the NFC is pretty weak, but I mean, it's Brock Purdy. It's a whole mystery we're just waiting to see unfold. So
this just like reminds me of some Saints teams in the 80s with a great defense and a quarterback that throughout the regular season could manage a game, but then you get to the playoffs and there's somebody like a Bill Belichick type defensive coach that just comes in and picks one thing, and that one thing destroys that team to where, I could see the Cowboys playing the 49ers, like you're saying, Zach, and they get a couple of defensive touchdowns, and that's enough to win. They don't have to worry about scoring as much against the defense. So, look, eager to watch it. I definitely didn't think the 49ers had a chance with Trey Lance to get too far this year, although he needed the year to grow. That puts him back even another year because he didn't play that long at all. And obviously, I can't get behind Brock Purdy yet, although I was not behind Tom Brady when he was playing for the Patriots that first year either. Dolphins, Chargers, I was really expecting some kind of crazy fantasy bonanza last night, and good gosh, did not get it. Number one, Chargers defense, you should be embarrassed by what happened on the play where Tyreek Hill picked up the fumble and scored a touchdown. You had shut them down for a quarter and a half. Tua was well below 50% completion percentage. Tua returned to the Tua of old, the Tua that got made fun of over the summer for, terrible inaccuracy. I don't know how you can't figure it out with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, but you have to figure it out. Okay, something has to happen. These two guys never have a great game the same time. They're always, one or the other. And, for Jalen Waddle to have his first reception in like the fourth quarter or his second reception in the fourth quarter is just terrible. This team is not ready. We're really going to see on Saturday when they have to play at Buffalo what happens with this team. Their defense was impressive to me yesterday, even though, the Chargers did have a good game and Justin Herbert finally had a good game, Zach, much to your chagrin. But I'm not ready. I don't think this team is ready. I think they'll make the playoffs, and it's the growth step that they needed.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I sorry, Jack.
Go ahead.
Okay. I think the Dolphins, definitely a playoff team. They're going to make the playoffs. Chargers, I'm still so on them right now because I feel like with them, there's literally a 50-50 chance they're going to make it because they're going to hover right around 500 it's just how they've been. They always hover around 500, and since they can't go 500 without a tie, and I don't expect them to tie, they're either going to be 8-9 and out of the playoffs or 9-8 praying for tiebreakers. It's going to be one of the two things. So I don't think there's a guarantee that the Chargers are a playoff team, but last night's win was, kind of impressive, even though Tua looked completely out of sorts. I'm still impressed by the Chargers win. Having Mike Williams back really helped Justin Herbert, getting some really good connections there. Keenan Allen looked good. The defense looked pretty solid overall. I'd say, if I'm the Chargers, I hope that you can ride the momentum. But once again, this is the Chargers. They literally flip-flop from being the best team you've ever seen to the worst team you've ever seen every other week. And it's honestly crazy just how they always flip-flop from being great and being bad. I don't get how they do it, but they do it. So they're going to finish 8-9 or 9-8.
They do have a great rest of the season schedule, though. They have the Titans. Titans at home, Colts away, Rams at home, Broncos away. They can make a run.
They
the
should
same
go
team.
3-1. They should go 3-1, but they're going to go
They
2-2.
Should go 4-0. Let's be real.
They
This
should
is
go
the
3-1.
same
We're going
team.
2-2.
They lost to Kansas City twice by 3. That's all I'm going to say. Jack.
Yeah, but I mean, as good as they are, I mean, last season we saw the collapse. I mean, we saw a team that we thought was a bona fide playoff team go into that overtime against the Raiders and blow it in week 18. I mean, like it's so Chargers, and it's not just the Brandon Staley Chargers. I mean, this has been the Chargers throughout their existence. There's always been this team that gets hype and then falls apart in the last second. So I honestly expect more of the same this year. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they don't make it to the playoffs. And then from the Dolphins' perspective, I'm a little bit concerned about Tua right now. I mean, this is back-to-back weeks that have, I think, without a doubt, been Tua's 2 worst games of the season. And it's really concerning. I mean, I think in the first half of this game, he had like 3 completions for 25 yards, which is unacceptable when you have the weapons that you do in that offense. And their offense needs to step up. There's no other way to put it. I have no doubt that Mike McDaniel will find a way to get these guys on the right page, because I do believe in him as a coach. I think he's a very smart guy, but the last 2 weeks have not been pretty for Miami. And if they want to be the team that they looked like they were earlier in the season, that offense is going to need to step up big time.
Chargers end up the 5 seed, and Sean Payton doesn't get the job in LA like he wants. He wants that young quarterback to work with, because Brandon Staley gets another year. That's the prediction.
The 5 seed is so generous for them.
Does he go back?
You think so? You should look at the standings.
Does it go back?
I don't care about the standings. They're going to go 2-2. They're going to go 2-2. It's the Charger way. They're going to blow those easy games. I can see them winning 2 of those games. They're not going to beat the Titans, and they're going to lose one of those last 3 games.
No, watch them choke that Broncos game in week 18. Watch
exactly. I can see that. That'll totally happen.
Now, y'all are just Charger haters. Look, they're 2 games behind the Ravens. Okay, it'll be tough to catch them, but the Ravens have injury issues. They're 1 game behind the Dolphins, but they get the tiebreaker. So all they need is the Dolphins to lose 1. I think they go 4-0, and they're sitting there at 11-6 as the 5 seed.
You're expecting the Chargers to go 4-0. That is
yeah.
awful. This is the Chargers route.
I'm going to do the money line parlay for the last 4 games. Boom, 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 boom. Get it done.
Look, the Chargers should go 3-1, and they will go 2-2. I will repeat that until the end of time. They're going to go. They should go 3-1. They're going to go 2-2, and they're going to barely miss the playoffs. I can see that.
Justin Herbert's going to have them averaging 35 points a game. All right, it's been a fun end to week 14. Getting to crunch time. It's kind of awesome. I am going to really miss the NFL Red Zone when it's gone in a month. But anyway, it's been fun, guys, and we will see you both on Wednesday for the fantasy show, getting you ready for wild card fantasy football wild card weekend. And I'm excited because in our staff league, I'm going to be the 1 seed after winning 10 in a row. Not so much to say about you two, but you give great fantasy advice. Thank you very much, and good night.